What if Megamind and Metro Man had switched lives from the very beginning? Imagine Metro Man growing up behind bars, shaped by isolation and survival, while Megamind is raised in a wealthy home, surrounded by comfort, education, and emotional support. This single change wouldn't just alter who becomes the hero and who turns into the villain, it would reshape the entire story. Motivations would shift, alliances would form differently, and the core conflict would take on an entirely new meaning. In this alternate reality, the rise and fall of each character plays out in reverse. The symbol of justice crumbles, the misunderstood genius rises, and the greatest threat might come from where no one thought to look. If Metro Man had landed in the same prison where Megamind was raised, his fate would be drastically different from the one we know. That place wasn't just a prison. It was a harsh, indifferent environment where innocence didn't last and kindness was seen as weakness. Metro Man wouldn't have been celebrated as a prodigy. He would have been treated as a threat. With his powers emerging early, he would draw attention, the kind that brings fear, control, and exploitation. There'd be no guidance, no affection, no stability. The adults around him wouldn't be capable, emotionally or morally, of raising someone like him. He'd grow up in an environment built on violence, distrust, and manipulation. In this reality, Metro Man wouldn't become a symbol of justice, but of survival. His powers would still be intact. Super speed, immense strength, heightened senses, but his perspective on the world would be shaped by suspicion and self-preservation. He'd learn fast that hesitation means weakness, and that fairness doesn't exist, only leverage. He wouldn't necessarily become a villain in the traditional sense, but he'd grow into someone hardened, impulsive, and driven by pragmatism. Most importantly, he wouldn't believe in sacrificing himself for a world that treated him like a mistake from day one. As an adult, he might still wear the title of protector, but not out of duty. He'd act when he chose to on his own terms. Deep down, he'd carry the same trait he showed in the original story, a rejection of the burden that comes with being the city's hero. Only this time, he wouldn't vanish as a dramatic escape. He might never show up at all. Or worse, he'd only appear when it served his own interests. Now picture the opposite scenario. Megamind being raised by a wealthy, stable, though not powerful family. A household with comfort, structure, access to quality education, intellectual encouragement, and most importantly, genuine emotional support. In this version of his life, he wouldn't be mocked at school or pushed aside as something strange. Instead of being an outcast, he'd be recognized as a gifted child, maybe a bit unusual, but appreciated for his intelligence. His inventions wouldn't be feared or dismissed, they'd be embraced as signs of brilliance. The people around him would see his potential, not a threat. In this environment, Megamind would never develop the deep-rooted sense of rejection that led him to adopt the identity of the bad guy. He was never evil by nature. The film makes that clear. He became what the world expected of him. Every failed attempt to fit in, every moment of rejection, shaped his belief that villainy was the only role he was allowed to play. But in this reality, that belief would never take hold. He would have grown up as an inventor from the start, maybe even a celebrated tech genius or a charismatic public figure in the world of science. His creativity and humor would still be part of who he is, but the drive behind them would change completely. Instead of acting out to prove his worth, he'd be inspired to create, lead, and innovate, not to be seen, but to make a real impact. Naturally, this alternate reality would drastically reshape the film's narrative, especially the dynamics between the main characters. Let's start with Roxanne. In Megamind, she's a well-known reporter in Metro City, frequently kidnapped by Megamind as part of the classic hero versus villain routine. Metro Man would always show up to save her, but over time it became clear this was just part of a predictable loop, until Metro Man faked his death and vanished. Although Roxanne publicly admired Metro Man, as most citizens did, the movie never hinted at any romantic involvement between them. Her genuine emotional connection was with Megamind, and that relationship sparked one of the film's most important turning points. As Megamind falls for her and begins revealing more of his true self, he slowly understands that he isn't defined by the villain role society placed on him. That shift starts with Roxanne seeing the real person behind the facade. Now, in this alternate version of events, Roxanne would likely view Metro Man with skepticism, especially if he came across as distant, arrogant, or self-serving. The cold, detached version of Metro Man wouldn't inspire her admiration in the same way the original heroic figure did. On the other hand, Megamind, now reimagined as a brilliant, compassionate scientist involved in social and technological progress, could catch her attention. But it's important to remember, personality played a key role in Roxanne's feelings for him. His awkward charm, self-doubt, quirky humor, all of it mattered. She was drawn to Bernard, Megamind's disguise, because she wanted to investigate the villain, but what kept her close was discovering the depth beneath the surface. In this reality, without the secrecy, conflict, or disguise, that spark might not appear instantly. Roxanne is sharp, analytical, and not easily impressed. For any connection to grow, it would depend entirely on their interactions, not just Megamind's accomplishments, but his ability to show vulnerability, conviction, and the kind of passion that made him stand out in the original story. Not as a flawless genius, but as someone real, driven by vision, and with a heart far bigger than the world ever expected. Now let's talk about Hal, also known as Titan. In this alternate timeline, we likely wouldn't see the same aggressive, unhinged side of him. He wouldn't gain powers, and his selfish, attention-seeking personality wouldn't fully emerge. He'd remain just what he was in the beginning, Roxanne's cameraman. A forgettable presence, stuck in the background, perpetually friend-zoned. Hal only became Titan because of a very specific chain of events. Metro Man's fake death and Megamind's desperate need to create a new hero, someone to maintain the balance between good and evil so he could keep playing his part. That artificial attempt at replacing a symbol opened the door for Hal to step into a role he was never prepared to handle. Without that situation, no missing Metro Man, no existential crisis pushing Megamind to build a rival, Hal would never be chosen. He'd stay exactly where he was, unnoticed. Not because people deliberately ignored him, but because he never had the initiative to step forward. He wasn't driven by a desire to protect or improve the world. What he wanted was power for validation, to feel superior, to finally be the center of attention. In this reimagined world, his story wouldn't even begin. He'd fade into the background, a supporting character in everyone else's life, hiding behind the lens and his own fear of rejection, hoping to be seen without ever earning that recognition. But if we push the scenario further, and imagine Metro Man growing up inside a prison, shaped by isolation, distrust, and a skewed sense of justice, what if he became the true villain? Unlike his original version, who simply walked away from heroism and chose to live in hiding, this version of Metro Man would be someone hardened by survival. He wouldn't protect the city, he'd control it. Not to keep it safe, but to impose order on his own terms. His strength would be the law, and anyone who opposed him would be treated as a threat. He wouldn't act out of cruelty, but out of belief, the belief that power is the only way to fix a broken world. A villain not motivated by hatred, but by absolute certainty that he's right. In this alternate reality, Megamind, raised in a wealthy home, nurtured with care and surrounded by science and values, becomes the last line of defense against total domination. He isn't a fighter. He's a strategist, a thinker, a builder. And that's exactly why he understands one critical truth. He can't take on Metro Man alone. By his side is Roxanne, not as a hostage, not as a pawn, but as an equal. Smart, proactive, and fully involved in trying to stop a threat that grows stronger every day. As they work together, their partnership deepens. This time, there are no disguises, no lies, just genuine connection. A bond built on trust, mutual respect, and the shared urgency of stopping a force far beyond either of them. But when it becomes clear that technology and planning won't be enough to stop Metro Man, Megamind makes a bold decision: to recreate a hero with powers equal to Metro Man's, just like he once did in the original story. The logic is simple: restore the balance by creating an equal counterforce. And once again, that power ends up in the hands of Hal. Hal, the quiet cameraman, remains a character shaped by frustration and insecurity. He's invisible, not because the world refuses to see him, but because he's never had the courage to step forward. Receiving Metro Man's powers changes everything, or at least it seems to. For the first time, Hal feels seen, valued, powerful, but that illusion quickly unravels when he realizes that even with super strength, speed, and the spotlight on him, Roxanne still doesn't see him the way he hoped. As her connection with Megamind grows stronger, something dark ignites in Hal: envy, resentment, and wounded pride. He no longer wants to save the city. He wants to be the center of it. The rejection stings deeper than any injury, and his disappointment soon outweighs any sense of duty. So he abandons the role of hero and turns against the very people who believed in him. Worse still, he aligns himself with Metro Man, convinced that, by joining forces, he'll finally gain the power, respect, and recognition he's always craved. What was meant to be the solution becomes a greater threat. Now, Megamind faces two enemies: one, a twisted version of what a hero should be; the other, a living reminder of his own misjudgment. And in this world turned upside down, the only constant is Megamind's drive to do what's right, even when nothing else makes sense. This role reversal exposes a harsh truth: These characters were never defined by their abilities, but by the environments that shaped them. Megamind, raised in a nurturing, resourceful household, would never have grown into a villain, because he never was one. He's intelligent, emotionally aware, and simply needed a place to belong. In the right setting, all of that would have flourished. Metro Man, on the other hand, despite his powers and privileged upbringing, revealed in the original story that even he couldn't carry the weight of being a hero forever. He faked his death, left the city behind, and disappeared, not because he failed, but because he walked away from the responsibility. He didn't become a villain, but he made a selfish choice that nearly destroyed everything he was supposed to protect. Now imagine that same personality trait, the inability to carry the weight of being a hero, in someone who never had support, love, or stability. Someone raised in neglect, surrounded by coldness, and without anyone to show him that trying was even worth it. In that reality, he wouldn't just be a hero who gave up. He might never try to become one at all. This role reversal highlights a deeper truth. We're not just defined by what we can do, but by how the world responds when we reveal who we are. In this version of the story, the line between hero and villain isn't drawn by fate or superpowers. It's shaped by circumstance. If the film started with their roles reversed, everything would shift from the very first scene. Megamind would be introduced as a gifted young inventor, raised in a wealthy household by parents who encouraged him to use his mind for good. He'd design technology to improve the city, solve major problems, and be seen as a new kind of hero, one without a cape, but with ideas no one could ignore. Meanwhile, Metro Man would emerge as a powerful yet unstable figure, shaped by a life behind bars. The city wouldn't know what to make of him. Sometimes he'd help, other times he'd act out unpredictably. To the public, he'd feel less like a guardian and more like a wild card, dangerous, misunderstood, and untrustworthy. Their first clash wouldn't be over ego, but ideology. Megamind would approach with logic, seeking dialogue, offering partnership. Metro Man would shut it down, acting impulsively, driven by unresolved anger and distrust. The story would evolve into a growing tension, not just between two characters, but between two philosophies, reason versus brute force. And instead of a redemption arc where the villain becomes a hero, we'd watch the opposite unfold. The supposed hero would start to question if doing the right thing is even worth it. And the man seen as a threat would slowly reveal that he was never evil. He was just failed by the world from the very beginning. It would be a darker, more serious film, one where the line between right and wrong blurs, and where every decision comes with a cost.